All right, welcome to Tougies Take episode 40. We did it. We're over the hill. 40 episodes. You've been there with us every step of the way. You listened to every episode 3 times, and we thank you, all hardcore fans, of which you all are. However, something very important happened this week, and we need to address it. It's Shark Week. So welcome to today's Warmies. They're shark themed. Oh, you thought they were going to be Habs Lost themed. They are not.
I was hoping.
They're shark themed because it's Shark Week. Or there's like a competing Pepsi-esque Shark Week. I forget what that's called, but it's on Nat Geo, where it's like Shark Fest. It's like the Shark Festival.
Fin Fest, maybe.
I think Fin Fest is something different, and I think it's not good for the environment. So I've got some shark questions for you. It was difficult to find difficult ones because people know all about sharks. So we'll start out. People are afraid of sharks. Thanks a lot, not Stephen King, but whoever the guy that wrote Jaws was. How many?
God. I actually, fun fact about that to completely derail this. There was a thread on Reddit that mentioned that the writer of the Jaws book was in the movie as the TV reporter. And then the entirety of the Reddit thread is mentioning just how shit the book is compared to the movie. So shout out to Jaws.
Nice.
Indeed, shout out to FinFest, which is real, by the way. Hosted on Jacksonville
Is it
Beach.
a ska festival?
You can go the weekend of September 18th and 19th, where it's a 2-day event that aims to educate attendees about sharks and how to better understand their place on Earth. So shout out to FinFest. If you'd like to sponsor us, please contact me at Tougie24@yahoo.com. Anyway, Warmies.
It's at a country club. That doesn't seem right. So
how many people go just so they can be like, ooh.
We were at FinFest at the country club eating shark fin soup, or whatever they do at country clubs. I assume it's evil. So
spit at
sharks.
minorities.
Yeah, it seems to be probably how golf was invented. So
if there was ever a show I'd want to restart if we weren't low on time,
it'd be this one.
It might be.
And we're all
even
over the place.
Even over the coldies.
It's our 40th. We'll do whatever we want.
We're middle aged, damn it.
Okay, so people are afraid of sharks.
Yes.
On average, how many people a year are killed by sharks?
Like 2.
It's 5.
I was going to say 11 initially, and I'm like, that's way too high.
It's been really low. It's been 2 or 3 for a while, but then for some reason in 2020, the sharks got real angry, and they got 10 people. Which seems weird, right? Like for the number to triple when during the pandemic, I guess people were just like, I've been home all day. I'm going to go punch this shark or whatever you do to get attacked. Because it's very uncommon. They essentially have the same temperament as dogs.
I wonder, like, would it be surfers in like South Africa or something? Like, what the hell is going on to where you're even in a situation to get attacked by a shark?
Yeah. Got to hang 10. That way the shark knows you're a person because you have toes. All right, so the next question. I didn't know the answer to this one, so I doubt anyone will. But what is the rarest species of shark?
Why do I feel like it's probably isn't the great white, but maybe it is because that's one of those things where it's like, oh, it's the most common, but also it's only the most common one you've heard of.
I mean, it'd be thematically appropriate because of Moby Dick.
The whale shark.
No, it's actually the pocket shark.
What the hell is a pocket shark?
What is a pocket shark? So the pocket shark is a very tiny shark. It's like maybe the size of your thumb, but that's not why it's called the pocket shark. It's called the pocket shark because the shark has pockets. Like under its fins, it has pockets. And the shark is so rare, they don't know what it keeps in its pockets or what the pockets are for. So I think it's really funny because the second you think pocket shark, it's like, oh, it's a shark you can put in your pocket. Well, you're not supposed to put sharks in your pocket. That's how you end up on the list of 10 people. But yeah, it's the pocket shark because it has pockets. What's it keep in its pockets? We'll find out. How many times can I say pockets?
Not enough.
Okay. We'll go for an easy one. What's the name of the vegan shark from Finding Nemo?
Oh my God. I don't remember. I must have seen that movie no less than 30 times. Like, people, it was like 100 times, like at least 30 times, because of my nieces who adored that movie. I don't remember.
Would
sorry.
you like to phone a friend?
God,
Do your nieces have phone numbers?
Text one of my nieces really quickly.
The answer is Bruce.
Bruce.
Sharks are friends, not food. Looking at you, FinFest. Okay, so the final question. In 2013, the Discovery Channel made a documentary about this species of shark, and it was met with significant global controversy.
Oof. Was this the one that they were making shark fin soup out of?
No.
Okay. I don't know. I don't know enough about sharks. Clearly, I need to watch Shark Week.
Well, so they made a documentary called Megalodon, The Monster Shark Lives,
Okay.
with mostly fake evidence and no caveat that it was fictional instead of educational. So they basically presented this fake documentary about how Megalodon was still alive. And in response to the controversy, instead of apologizing, next year they had another documentary called Megalodon, The New Evidence. And to quote the article that I took this from the Washington Post, of which apparently they had none. They had no new evidence.
Was this around the time? God, was this around the time? I don't know if it was on the Sci-Fi Channel or what, but there was another fake documentary about mermaids and how they were real and also vicious killers of the sea.
They are real. I saw the documentary.
God, I think it was a shitty. Yeah, it was a mockumentary on like Animal Planet and the Discovery Channel.
Oh, mermaids, the body found.
The body found.
Yes.
And people are like, well, it's on Animal Planet. It has to be real. It was great.
Yeah. I mean, that was also, I mean, this was from the Discovery series where they were making like fabricated documentaries. Mm-hmm. Like they had one called Old Hitler. It was about a 60-year-old rogue hammerhead that just ate people by itself, which hammerheads notoriously hunt in schools. And they also had one called Submarine about a monster shark that ate full boats. But these are all fake.
Why was it called Rogue Hitler? Or were those two different
Old
things?
Hitler. Oh. The rogue hammerhead. I feel like they were just, at that point, they were picking words out of a hat.
What do we name the
Discovery Channel? Discover what we made up. Discovery Channel. Try to discover the truth.
Oh my God.
So yeah, Shark Week. It happens. It's happening everywhere but San Jose.
Oh God, yeah, I missed this last, earlier in the week there, Deej. I know you mentioned it. You know, it was the joys of me thinking. I don't know what it is, but I have a tendency. I don't know if I ever told you this story. I have a tendency with dentists to be told one thing's going to happen, and then I get to the office and find out something else is going to happen. So what I mean by that is about 10 years ago, I went to have a tooth removed because they thought it was a baby tooth that was stuck. I get to the office and they're just like, oh, as it turns out, that's an adult tooth, but we can pull all 4 of your wisdom teeth now if you want. So on a minute's notice, I get my wisdom teeth pulled.
We're willing to cut you a deal.
Yeah, right. And then this week, it was, hey, you know that tooth you're having a shitload of pain with? Well, because you can't get into an endodontist, which is a great word, by the way. It's basically someone who specializes in
It's my favorite dinosaur.
Right? Because you can't get in until August 23rd because the U.S. healthcare system is screwed and nobody went to the dentist last year during the pandemic. So every goddamn office in the state of Maine is booked until at least 2 months out. Come on in and we'll pull off a pulpectomy, which will take away the pain but not fix the issue long term. And I'm like, sweet. And then I get there and they're just like, yeah, about that. We could do that, and then you can go and get the root canal, but there might be a decent chance of it failing. It's probably best if you have it pulled. So I had a tooth pulled on, again, a minute's notice, but I've had virtually no pain with it. which is delightful. Which, again, you'd think there would have been something, but the most discomfort I had was my face was still numb 4 hours after the procedure.
Yeah.
So that was interesting. I went through an NHL gamer cast with half of my face still numb. So, yeah, hey, what are you going to do? But I enjoyed what I heard of your solo episode there.
Hey, sometimes you just got to act like it's late night jazz hour on the jazz station here at W Jazz.
I'm W Jazz for 92.5 The Hoof.
Well, I'm glad to not be writing solo. And if you at home are glad to not be writing solo for the first time in a week, maybe you should use code Tougie.
Maybe
20%
you
off
should.
of Manscaped. And prepare yourself for group interactions. Manscaped, home of the Lawnmower 4.0, the Weed Whacker, refined, the greatest cologne in the history of parfumes, and the Ultra Smooth package. Manscaped, our gracious sponsor. Pick something up. They support us. They'll support you. They'll make you feel clean, look clean, smell clean, and cut a second off your butterfly. That's code Tougie, Tougie, for 20% off at manscaped.com. On W Jazz.
I'm like, cool, that's where the intro will go. It's like, no, he kept going.
Coming up next on W Jazz, it's the intro.
This is the intro now. This is the intro now. This is the intro now. That sounds good.
And we're back. Only the hits. we got some viewer questions.
Oh God, we do. I missed our viewer questions. Sweet, beautiful viewer question. We'll start off one here that's kind of just out of nowhere, but whatever, we'll go for it. This one's from Garber. If Taylor Hall doesn't return to Boston, what team do you see most likely signing him? Now, I will say this is a very familiar situation because Toronto has been rumored. And it reminds me of when Jerome McGinley was going to go to Boston, and he didn't. And he went to Pittsburgh. And then the Bruins shit on Pittsburgh in the playoffs. And then he ended up going to Boston the next year. I can't help but think that this might be similar. Maybe Taylor Hall goes to Toronto and it still doesn't work out. Whereas imagine if he did go to Toronto. I do agree with the idea that it was the right move to go for who Toronto went for. At the time, you could say in hindsight, maybe that, Taylor Hall would have helped out quite a bit. But yeah, it seems to be a lot of smoke around Taylor Hall, but I don't see how they make that work cap-wise. I really don't. So I don't know.
Yeah.
We were asked the question, Deej, of like, where do you see the top UFAs going? And we're still holding off on that until this very, very muddy picture is resolved.
We've got other material before we run out of it.
We can't just blow through all of our summer discussion points right now.
I really want Taylor Hall to go to the Dallas Stars, but it's just not going to work. I really want the Taylor-Tyler flavor combo.
I didn't even think of that.
But it's not going to work with their cap situation.
That would be interesting.
Everybody and keep them in Texas.
And we just passed the anniversary of Tyler Seguin getting traded to Dallas too, which not an anniversary that I'm a fan of, as you would imagine. Deej, any thoughts on Taylor Hall? I mean, aside from Dallas, I don't know. I don't know if you want to be like, yep, this is it. This is where he's going in the end.
I don't know. I also like the idea of him in Minnesota, but there's so much. It's weird because I think Taylor Hall is not going to be, he's going to be one of the last players that gets signed because there's so many dominoes moving in this offseason. And to clear out the at least $8 million he's going to command,
Interesting.
It's going to be a finishing touch piece because you have to have the room, you have to plan around it, and all your other moves have to happen around it. And I think if you're a good GM, you don't make that move first because then it influences all your other decisions as opposed to being like the luxury of, can we add this guy?
I think then it's a similar situation to when he signed in Buffalo then, right? Like,
Yeah,
hey,
exactly.
I'm commanding this much money, and teams around the league are going to be like, well, we can't commit to that in the first week of the off season. And then, yeah, maybe he ends up signing for less. Maybe not on a Buffalo again, but
Yeah, he goes back to Buffalo.
gets traded again. Secret Agent Hall. I mean, he was around long enough to, net them the first overall pick. So that's not a horrible idea. The Arizona Coyotes could be like, please come back until February. Not a horrible idea. Next question comes from Nico. Deej, how did you and I become friends?
I answered this on Twitter. It was Hot Wheels.
So from my recollection, and I'll have you give your recollection, it was just one of those things, like as a streamer on Twitch, there are some moments, I guess, where you host somebody and it's like, oh yeah, they seem cool, but then you never talk to them again. And then for some reason you host somebody and it just turns into an actual friendship. And this was one of them where I'm sure you were streaming NHL, like positive of it. And then you switched to, was it a Forza Hot Wheels edition?
So it was Forza. It was Forza 3, or maybe it was Forza Horizon, but they had the Hot Wheels expansion pack.
Yeah,
and we Tougie and I have a long love of racing games, and so Tougie hosted me, and right after he hosted me, like I was infinitely familiar with the Hunt for Rumble thing. And so I was immediately like, are you guys not watching his stream? This dude's insane. He's ripping open thousands of packs. He hasn't slept in a week. And so like it came from like our mutual love of the ridiculousness of the Hunt for Rumble that Tougie was doing. And then I was playing Forza Hot Wheels and Tougie was like, I like racing games. Let me ask a bunch of questions about this. So it just ended up like between Forza, Battlefield, NHL, it just turned out we liked all the same games, and then we were the only two people on the East Coast that were like awake at 3 a.m.
It's true.
That was it.
So yeah, I don't know. It's weird though, right? Because I think about it, and I get asked it a lot. Like, oh, how'd you become friends with this person and this person? Like, I don't know, like how I became friends with like Deke Slayer, for example. I know how I became friends with Architect, and it was through you. And he
through Battlefield.
Yeah, and we ended up playing Battlefield together, and he hated me because I'm like pointing out someone. I'm like, there's somebody right in front of the tank. Shoot him. And I know Architect has told me. He's like, Architect said to Deej, God, that Tougie guy is a real asshole. Yet somehow, I don't know what it is, that sweet New England Buffalo, that it worked. It just worked. So
yeah, it was like the next time I got on Xbox, I was like, are Tougie and Architect playing Battlefield together without me?
You've been usurped already. So yeah, shout out to just a random streamer. Like I said, that just happens. Sometimes you talk to somebody one time and then all of a sudden it's like, oh, hey, we're friends now. And that was 3 years ago?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it would have been almost 4.
Jesus. Yeah, because, oh God, you're right. Because we were friends when, what was it, FIFA 18 put out their
NHL 18, FIFA 18.
Yeah, because FIFA 18 had put out, I remember, because you're like, I kind of want to get into FIFA. And I'm like, well, now's a great time because they put out like the Euros when it was in Russia. They put out like their expansion of that. And I'm like, and then you started playing FIFA and you're like, this is stupid. I'm packing all good shit. It's because they really boosted up the packs for that expansion.
Yeah, I got a Pele in my first pack. I mean, albeit it was a loan card, but he was like a 99 and he had a 9-game loan on him. So I was like, oh, so much for the hunt.
Oh man. So yeah, hey, it's been good. It's been good. So next question here comes from Devin Eldridge. What were your favorite moments / memories of this NHL season? And this is a tough one for me because admittedly, so much of it feels like an absolute blur, doesn't it? Like this entire season, now that it's over, it's very tough to think back. Like, for example, Deej, the Bruins played outdoors at Lake Tahoe this season. Doesn't that feel like that happened 2 years ago?
the slush bowl.
Yeah.
With the kayakers. Just getting that free.
God.
There's those, they're creeping up in the lake, waiting for that rink to turn into water so they could run across the field. Yeah, I don't. So my favorite moments, number one, Leafs losing.
Poor bastards.
I can't think of any others off the top of my head.
Habs losing.
Yeah, right.
Oh,
I don't know. I'd have to think about that because it does seem so compacted.
I mean, for you, like, I'd imagine the highlight for your season had to have been Spencer Knight beating the Lightning in a playoff game.
Yeah, that was huge. I lost my voice to that.
And then we recorded like the next day, didn't we?
It's like Spencer Knight, he looked great last night. It's like the kid's gonna be great.
I've been smoking for 40 years.
Like it probably sounds like I sucked down 5 Macanudo cigars, but it's just the kid made his debut.
Oh God.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, that was a big one. Also, if you'd like to hire me for voice acting, that's at Deej1088 on Twitter. I can make it sound like you're very sick and need to be out of work. So you're welcome.
Yeah. Oh God. I mean, like Taylor Hall getting traded to the Bruins at like midnight for much, much less than anybody thought.
Yeah.
That was a pretty fun night. God, just the entire season of being able to watch Connor McDavid be just unbelievable. Like that, like to me, like that might be the highlight of the season. It's like this is a season that you're going to talk about for Connor McDavid for a long, long time, even if in the playoffs they completely crashed and burned.
The Jeff Carter 4-goal game was a lot of fun too.
Jesus, yeah.
Yeah, there were a lot. We'll have to like play like Vitamin C's Graduation and do a retrospect next episode.
We'll move on to our next question here. This comes from Hawks. Your way too early 2022 Cup final prediction. With the conferences going back to what they were, there is an expansion team in the mix now. Deej, your prediction as of July 9th, 2021, of who is going to make the Stanley Cup final next year. It's a tough one.
Panthers Stars.
Ooh. I like it. Oh, well. I look at the West, and you want to say like Colorado, Vegas are going to be the two most common predicted teams. And you know they're going to have to go through one another every time. Like they're going
to try and add too much beef.
They just seem destined. I'm going to say that the Edmonton Oilers make it because Duncan Keith is going to push them over the top, baby. Edmonton and Boston gets revenge for the early 90s. Please let that happen.
Reasonable.
Seems homerish. But yeah, man, who the hell knows, right? So much is about to change. And speaking of which, this was our final question, not really a question, but this is why I had one lead into the other. This comes from Z-Pops, who I will always call you that, by the way. So with the season coming to an end, will we be getting more episodes of Wicked Tugna? Now, obviously, people have been wondering, okay, once the season ends, what happens? And like I mentioned, a lot's about to change when it comes to the NHL. We all know this. This was mentioned. The plan in the NHL is for the league to release every team's protected list for the expansion draft sometime on Sunday, July 18th. The teams must submit their list the prior day. The expansion draft is on Wednesday, the 21st. which means our expansion draft special is locked in. It will be on Tuesday the 20th. Deej and I will give our full prediction. We'll go team by team and list who we think the Seattle Kraken will claim. So our expansion draft special, again, will be on the 20th. Very much looking forward to that. And then after
so
that...
many guest stars. Tougie, we're going to have Deej.
Oh, God. We should end up having other people on, actually, for
Stephen
that.
King.
Dean Koontz.
Dean Koontz. Like special guest stars. Zach Braff.
What's he up to nowadays? So, yeah, I mean, again, and after that, we have the draft, we have free agency. We're going to be busy until, like, the early to middle of August. Like, the second week of August. Up until then, we're going to have still plenty of stuff to talk about. At that point, we will probably go down to one show a week, obviously. But, yeah, until then, like, we still have another month's worth of hockey to talk about consistently. So, very much looking forward to that. And then do we get Wicked Tugna after that? Time will tell.
Yeah, I mean, you guys still need to learn about flounder tramping, how to catch a corn on a cop, how to do a tuna in a crowd, how to get a trout with a mini marshmallow, how to do New Zealand kite fishing, how to use a Hawaiian sling, or even the banned in some countries salmon wheel. So we will get some more Wicked Tugna.
So we'll move on here to our other talking points because I got nothing for that. Wanted to talk more like our general hockey talk segment before we get into talking about Tampa and Montreal to round out the show here. It'll be not a super short episode, but a relatively short episode. I wanted to mention this as well, obviously not being on the show on Tuesday. Deej talked about this at the very start, but I also, again, wanted to send along my condolences. Obviously, the Matis Kivlenik's story is just horrible, absolutely horrible, and I won't carry out this part of the show, but it always seems like we have to have our negative aspect to every show, even though it's a hockey podcast. And yeah, still just an absolute tragedy. And then, of course, Deej, because there always has to be something about this Blackhawks story, I wanted to talk about the Gary Bettman Ron McLean interview, which was almost a week ago, so it feels like it's completely out of public attention, but obviously it happened on Sportsnet. There was no mention whatsoever of the Chicago Blackhawks scandal. Nothing. And now a few days later, I believe this was earlier today, Miami University now says that there were 2 sexual assault allegations involving the former Blackhawks coach who is under scrutiny here, whose name I don't even feel like mentioning at this point. Now, I get some people's expectation of saying, well, what the hell do you expect Gary Bettman to say? At most, all he's going to say is, look, it's pending legal procedure. There's nothing I can say. That is exactly what I wanted him to say. Reference it in front of that situation. Audience.
Like, obviously, he's a former attorney. Like, he understands how to talk about something without getting in trouble for it. But, like, to not even mention it, to me, says... this is real, whatever, because he knows more than you or I do. Mm-hmm. There's no way he's at the same level of information. And so this has got to be, it's going to be real bad. I think way worse than either of us thought or either of us wanted it to be because it didn't even get the mention.
I agree. And that's my big issue with it is a lot of people on the internet are saying, well, what's he going to say that we don't already know? The point is you're trying to reach the audience that's not on Reddit every day. That's not on Twitter every day. This story, flat out, I guarantee you, there are a lot of hockey fans that haven't heard about this. Flat out. And this was a tremendous, now look, I don't want to say opportunity, but this was a chance to put more of a spotlight on it. And obviously, you don't expect Gary Bettman to necessarily bring it up, but Ron McLean mentioned, oh yeah, there were no limitations to the questions that could be asked. So this is a failure on Sportsnet's part and a failure on Ron McLean's part to not do their part in not letting this story just fade away, which it's going to naturally do as it gets into the legal proceedings. You notice we don't have every day, every other day excerpts about, oh, here's what's going on. And that's because this process has truly begun. So it is up to Ron McLean. It is up to Sportsnet to do their parts. And then on the flip side, while you're not even mentioning that stuff, of course, you throw up softball questions with giving Gary Bettman the opportunity to say, our officials are the best in sports. And George Peros and the Department of Player Safety have done a terrific job, and they've been very consistent, which people, of course, laughed at. And my response was, yes, being consistently inconsistent is still being consistent. Like, to me, this was just a tire fire of an interview, Deej.
Yeah. No, I agree. I think in a weird way, and I've had this discussion with some of my friends, is there is a way of talking, especially amongst people that are older, like people that are age 50 and above, where they only want to hear nice things, polite things, flowery language, and like things need to be presented with a certain front. And there is a large generational gap where people below that, all they want is the truth and something real because they can just go look it up, you know? And it, in this case, in a way, just not mentioning anything is, oh, the NHL wants this story to go away, which it's not going to. And I think that was shown today. I mean, if you look at the top page of Reddit, there's at least 3 stories about it. It's coming back. The cup has been awarded. This is what people have to think about. And I don't think there's any amount of mock expansion drafts that will take over this story.
Now, one other thing that was mentioned in this interview, in the quote here, Gary Bettman tells Ron McLean if details on travel costs and insurance coverage get worked out, we'll be going to the Olympics. Bettman adds that insurance needs to include provisions for all the risks, including COVID, which is very difficult, if not impossible to buy. Deej, I don't think we're going to be seeing the NHL go to the Olympics in February.
I don't know. I mean, I know that the insurance industry is significantly more flexible than people think it is. And I mean, I don't know if you saw this, but there's not going to be anybody in attendance at the Olympics.
For Tokyo this year.
Yeah, no one in the stands. So I think we end up going to the Olympics still. I think it's I think it's fine. There's going to be a insurance. There's going to be insurance that covers it. Like somebody will come up with an idea.
Well, that's what the NHL always wanted, right? Is it's like, well, where's our security by sending our top stars to your league? And if they get hurt, then our product back home is diminished once the Olympics are over. Like, that's always been their biggest issue. It's a big part of the reason, if not the biggest reason, why the NHL didn't go. What was it in Pyeongchang? When the Olympic athletes of Russia took home gold over a Germany squad that had none of their top players. So, yeah, shout out to Sportsnet for really dropping the ball there. Speaking of dropping the ball, Deej, we have an update on the Buffalo Sabres again. And
Yes.
the Jack Eichel saga. Talk about not knowing how things are going to play out here. This was mentioned. This beautiful thing was mentioned. This is a quote from Sabres GM Kevin Adams, stating, the Sabres will build around young core of Dahlin, Cousins, and Middlestat. Is there a name that's missing?
Yeah, Owen Power. Yeah, you gotta think that they, there's no hope there. They're not even like, we're still hopeful of keeping this young core. It's like, no, it's gone. We're gonna suck for the next 10 years. It's like we might even buy a bus ticket, move the team to Hamilton.
That's what it seems like. So the question's been out there as well as to whether or not they'd go with Owen Power or William Eklund's name has really shown up as of late. And I said, even dating back to a couple weeks ago, I'm like, no, they're going to take Owen Power. If you trade Jack Eichel, they're taking William Eklund number 1. Like, he's a guy who can play wing, but he's also a guy who can play center. And in theory, if you were going to get rid of Jack Eichel, having the ability to trade Jack Eichel and then bring in William Eklund to try and be his direct replacement makes a lot of sense. So it's an interesting kind of setup here where obviously it's tough to envision winning a trading Jack Eichel situation, but depending on what you get for him, you do get William Eklund, who, again, 18 years old. He had 23 points in 40 games in Sweden in the outright SHL, not the under-20 league, not the under-18. very, very promising prospect. But just that idea is crazy. And obviously, like, it really does lend credence to the idea that the whole debate over surgery and how Jack wanted to handle his recovery and the decision he wanted to make with his own body, like that just seems like, they just aren't going to be able to find that middle ground whatsoever.
Yeah.
And
real unfortunate. That's just, it's
a good way to put it. So it's interesting, though, because you have this story with Eichel, Jack Eichel, as I like to call him. And the big concern is over the trust with team doctors. And we are apparently seeing the same thing now as Vladimir Tarasenko has officially requested a trade. And the story was as to why he wants out. According to sources familiar with the situation, he's upset with the team's handling of his shoulder surgeries in 2018 and 2019, his first 2 of 3 such surgeries, which were performed by Blues physicians, and feels that there's no trust left between him and the organization. Now, you and I talked about Vladimir Tarasenko not all that long ago, and yeah, that story out there of the thought of he's one shoulder injury away from not being able to have a normal life moving forward. And, we've seen the stories in the last year or so. Like, I know a piece was put out about Zenon Konopka and Ryan Kessler and the struggles that these guys are having in their post-playing careers. And now, the question was out there, and we got another question. It was from Alex Turcotte's Stan account. Where does Tarasenko go and who can afford him if St. Louis retains or not? Like, the thought of your team trading for Vladimir Tarasenko when you're hearing of these shoulder issues and that he wants out because he doesn't trust the Blues to be able to do what's best for him moving forward. Like, the idea was thrown out. Friend of the channel there, one old Sean, Ginger Ninja on Twitter. He's like, oh, cool, the Bruins trade DeBrusque, get Tarasenko. I don't think I want the Bruins to get Vladimir Tarasenko. I mean, at his peak, he was a fantastic top 6 option. And I had talked about this on stream, and really it was from about 2013-14 up until they won the Cup. Fantastic player. Even last year in 19-20, he played 10 regular season games and had 10 points. He then went pointless in 4 games in the playoffs last year. But he was a consistent, high 60s, if not 70-point guy. And, especially, too, towards a time where you had Jamie Benn winning, the Art Ross with, 84 points?
Yeah.
So Tarasenko was a really good option. But he's going to turn 30 at the end of the year, $7.5 million for this upcoming season and next, and has this incredible concern about shoulder injuries. I mean, given that news, it's not surprising that he wants out of St. Louis. But, he's been rumored, obviously, because I guess, the Russian connection that the Panthers seem to have, he's been rumored to maybe get traded to the Panthers. I don't have any confidence that he could stay healthy. Yeah, for Bobrovsky, right? If he were to get traded to the Panthers, could you feel incredibly optimistic as you'd prefer to? Obviously, you can't overlook those injury concerns.
If he was being traded for one of Yandel, Strawman, or Bobrovsky, I'd be cool with it.
See, the Yandel one's interesting because I think there could be some credence to that. Granted, it would be expensive, but everyone seems to think Vince Dunn is leaving to Seattle in this expansion draft. So if you look and that defense were to be Yandel, Falk, Krug, Parayko, Scandella, Bortuzzo, and then maybe some of the younger guys like Mikkola and Wallman fit in there, that's not that bad. It's not as if Keith Yandel, last I knew at least, I'm intrigued to look up some of the metrics on the fly here, but it's not as if Keith Yandel is completely cooked. And I mean, there would always be the argument as well of, in a different environment, what could he do? And I'm honestly, I'm looking at Keith Yandel's metrics for this season. Obviously, he can't play defense worth a damn. But as an offensive power play specialist, if you have Torrey Krug and Justin Falk on the top power play, and then Keith Yandel and like Colton Parayko, or Keith Yandel and a secondary or a fourth forward on the ice, like that could be a very dynamic power play setup along the blue line for St. Louis next season. So yeah, I wouldn't hate that idea of Yandel, Tarasenko, and obviously more pieces involved. That wouldn't be that bad.
Yeah, St. Louis, you'd be fools not to do it.
Fair enough. So yeah, it's interesting that we have like the same story going on with two different teams in regards to players not having trust in the medical staff that's there. And for Buffalo, you're like, oh, of course it's Buffalo, but to hear it from St. Louis is all that more surprising, in my opinion. And as far as where he goes, I mean, there's a lot of teams that can afford him. It's just a matter of what the hell is the right fit.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah. So, Deej, aside from that, then, those are kind of the other talking points that we had. Shall we talk about it? The Tampa Bay Lightning have gone back-to-back. They win the Stanley Cup again, and the mayor of Tampa, well, she gets what she wants as they win it on home ice. And I do believe become the first team to win it on home ice since the Chicago Blackhawks in 2015. Which is interesting to me because, of course, in the aftermath of this, and there's been a lot in regards to the Lightning, there was a story put out by the Hockey News that said after the 2015 Stanley Cup, the Tampa Bay Lightning proposed a vote to end the salary cap loophole that enabled the Blackhawks to go $5 million over the cap. There wasn't a single team in the league that joined Tampa in that proposal, and now 6 years later, everyone's bitching about them using the same loophole to win back-to-back Stanley Cups. I think it's fascinating.
It's absolutely fascinating. That was the year where Patrick Kane was over a point per game, and after 66 games got hurt.
God, yeah.
It's also interesting because this is in the pre-salary cap era, but Peter Forsberg, I believe, was the last player since Kucherov to miss every single game of a regular season and then show up for the playoffs. And Forsberg actually led, I want to say it was 0-2, and Forsberg led the playoffs in scoring that year.
Damn.
So, I mean, there's
Sounds
some weird
right
precedents for like everything everyone's mad about. And I mean, you combine that with like, there's no rules against putting pillows under your pads.
So here's my thing, right, is I love the selective nature in which people will try to, pick a narrative and run with it. Allow me to elaborate. Oh, well, the player polls say this guy's the best. So I don't care what your eye test or analytics say. The players and management think this. But then in an instant like this, oh, now all of a sudden you don't trust those who are actually involved in the sport. All of a sudden, because I mean, here you go. Plain as day, people in the sport didn't think it was a problem. So what's wrong? You trust those in the sport's opinion on these subjects, but not on this subject. Nobody can be mad. Tampa themselves said, hey, this is an issue. Nobody fixed it. So they went here and said, well, it's technically not breaking the rules. Let's do it. But now you have a problem with it? No. And I've said that on this show so many times. I think anyone who's complaining about Tampa Bay violating the sanctity of the cap and sportsmanship, that you're just mad that your team wasn't in a position to do this. Bottom line. Because again, your leadership, your ownership said it's not a problem 6 years ago. So if your star player says this guy's the best goalie in the league, you're like, well, shit, I don't care about what the analytics say. Players think this. It's no, just flat out. It's not a problem. If they fix it, cool. But there is no magical asterisk on this cup for the Lightning. I'm sorry. There's not. They earned these back-to-back cups by being the best team. And Deej, I put out a video on Twitter the night that, or on YouTube, I should say, the night that they won the cup. And I mentioned this, right? Like the idea of, like, is there any salt on my part with Tampa winning the cup? Like, no. They're an incredible goddamn team. I mentioned on Twitter, I do still get hate messages on like a daily basis because of that video that I put out on YouTube last September, basically calling the team a disgrace for holding a championship parade during a pandemic, which are words I stand by. Obviously, this year, the difference is when they hold that parade, vaccines fucking exist this time. But I won't reiterate every point in that video. Feel free to go check it out on YouTube. But yeah, I mean, I'm sorry. There's nothing you can say, in my opinion, about like the legitimacy of a title or anything like that. I mean, dude, it's funny because you look at some of these talking points. It's like Tampa, the first Stanley Cup champion to win all 16 games in regulation. Like there's so many different stats like that where it's just like this team is as much as people memed the word juggernaut from Montreal.
I got a fantastic stat that was brought up to me this week.
Mm-hmm.
Every single team whose GM was named a finalist for GM of the Year was beaten by the Tampa Bay Lightning in the playoffs this year.
Wow.
They beat the Panthers, they beat the Islanders, they beat the Habs. That's insane. And they got revenge for 2015. So in a way, this was the sweetest revenge for Julien Brisebois.
Jesus. I didn't even think of that. That's
yeah. Who was the real GM of the year?
Right? Well, they always say the Stanley Cup is the real GM of the Year award, but
and it was. Very much was. Unquestionably so this year.
It's like you look at some of these stats amongst all-time like cup finalists. So out of all the years, you look at the final two teams in the cup final matchup. Tampa was tied for the second best power play of all time. 32%. Just ungodly. The Lightning now have 69 wins. Nice. In the playoffs since their 2015 run, which is 27 more wins than the second place team in the NHL. Which is just absurd how dominant they have been in this time. The 62-win Lightning that got swept by Columbus in 1819. Since then, Tampa has won 8 straight playoff series. They have never trailed in a series. They have never lost back-to-back games, and they have won 2 cups in a row. Like, there's something poetic too, Deej, about this one. With the Lightning's defeat of the Habs, NBC's contract comes to an end after 16 years. That we know of. Obviously, God. 2000. Yeah. I by the end of this, I was so tired of Pierre McGuire. Holy shit. Of course, that 16 years, 2005 to 2021. This ended the same way that the ESPN ABC package ended. 2004, Tampa wins the cup on home ice against a Canadian team. And now all these years later, the NBC era comes to a close with Tampa winning the cup on home ice against a Canadian team. It's just, it was written, Deej, clearly. It's all a big fix because don't you know, Bettman took over as commissioner in 93 and no Canadian team has won since. Despite the fact, of course, that the Habs won the year Bettman was included. But since then, the fix has been in.
Yeah, I mean, now ESPN gets to start this run with the cup belonging to their closest team geographically.
See, it's all fixed.
ESPN has already won the cup without ever doing a broadcast.
So, like, there's just there are just so many ways that you can just praise this team, and rightfully so. And God, it's like you look at just the efficiency of it, just the stories of it. By the way, shout out to people who are apparently sending death threats to Mikhail Sergachev. Fuck's sake, some people, my God. But
to me, what's fascinating is like Mikhail Sergachev to me seems like the guy that just never checks his mail. You know?
Yeah.
I don't know how do you even get a message to Mikhail Sergachev? Is like, that's what's fascinating to me.
It seems to me like it's always Insta DMs.
That's
like
fair. I was thinking Skywriters is like the best way. Or like send a telegram to Amalie Arena.
So in terms of others, like, again, we could sit here and praise Tampa a ton. And don't worry, we're about to. But just kind of these general talking points. Deej, 3 straight cups now for Patrick Maroon, which is just insane to think about.
He's He's passed Gretzky in consecutive cups.
Yeah, Gretzky only had a maximum of 2, didn't he?
Yeah, I believe the all-time leader. I brought this up on the at the very end of the last episode, but it's Guy Lafleur with 4.
So who will Patty Maroon go to next? But just it's funny though, because you think back, it's like he's 33, and it's not all that long ago. It's like, here's Patrick Maroon on Anaheim, here's Patrick Maroon on the Oilers, and then he was on New Jersey for like 17 games. And it's just, I remember it's like, oh, he went to the Blues for not much, and now all of a sudden he's a 3-time Cup champ. Like, who would have thought when he was a Duck or an Oiler that he would be a pretty decent part of 3 straight Cup teams? And he is the first player to win 3 consecutive Cups since members of the Islanders dynasty between 80 and 83. So just incredible stuff there. And Ross Colton as well became the 7th rookie ever to score a Cup clinching goal, easy for me to say, and only the 2nd player to do so post World War II. In the past 82 years, only 2 rookies have scored the Cup clinching goal. Ross Colton this year and Mike Rupp for the New Jersey Devils in 2003.
And the Great War did destroy rookie scoring.
Yeah, God. So in terms of talking about the Lightning, we have 3 other sections here. It's specifically about Andrei Vasilevsky, specifically about Nikita Kucherov. That is now sponsored by Bud Light Nikita Kucherov. That's a real thing, apparently, which is hilarious.
In a way, I think Kucherov should be the mayor of Tampa. That was my immediate impression. So what was interesting to me is I was driving somewhere after the game and I heard this post-game interview on the radio. So when I got home and got to see clips of it, the context of the interview quickly changed, because on the radio it was not apparent that he was shirtless and hunched over. So it just oh man.
We'll talk more about Cooch in a second. That other talking point was what's next for the Lightning. Let's start off by talking about Conn Smythe winner Andrei Vasilevsky. Earns his 5th consecutive series clinching shutout, which ties Chris Osgood for the most in history, which is just insane. Like, you talk about the run that the Capitals went on to, they knocked off Tampa en route to winning their cup, and it's like how dominant Braden Holtby was around that time. And now you see what Andrei Vasilevsky has done. It's crazy.
And he's only 26.
But Deej, he's a vicious cheater, don't you know? He has larger pads. He's 3 humans inside of 1 human. It's not fair. He big cheater.
Yeah, I saw that photo.
Jesus.
I also know how lenses work.
It's Deej, it's the refs. It's Gary Bettman. It's Vasilevsky was allowed bigger pads than Carey Price, even though anyone who knows stuff about goalie pads will tell you that they're not all made the same. The grasping at straws has been phenomenal, though, hasn't it? Like, my
Really
goodness.
has.
I don't know if I've ever seen this many excuses thrown out.
Yeah. I don't know. This has definitely been the most entertaining of all the weird narratives.
I mean, when's the last time you saw someone a claim that they were allowed different equipment?
It would have to be like when there were rumors of Kovalchuk using an illegal curve. That's the last time I can think of something like this
I
being
forgot about
so
that.
widespread. And it was only rumors. Like, they never actually went to check his stick.
Right. God, just delightful. Now, we had talked about Vasilevsky's history against Montreal entering the playoffs. I think it was 8, had won like 8 in a row. And in game 3, he became the first goalie since World War II to record 11 straight wins against the Habs. And obviously now is 12-0-1 in his last 13 games against Montreal. It's just absolutely ridiculous how good he is. And obviously, it kind of lends into the Nikita Kucherov press conference as well, where, one of the things he claimed before really pissing people off. Obviously, he criticized people for not voting Vasilevsky for MVP and for the Vezina, using the words "that guy in Vegas" towards Marc-Andre Fleury. So At least you know how how Vasi's teammates feel about him not getting the Vezina this year. But before talking specifically about Kucherov, I mean, Deej, what the hell more can you say about it? Has Andrei Vasilevsky already clinched a spot in the Hockey Hall of Fame?
Yes.
I agree. Unless there is a drastic injury, he's going to win more Vezinas. He is already a 2-time Stanley Cup champion. And I feel like in a lot of ways, people look at their goalie being was this goalie among the best, if not the very best of his generation? Again, there were some doubts about Vasi about a year or two ago. There are no doubts anymore. My God.
Yeah. I mean, at this point, he could never play another game and still be in the Hall of Fame. I mean, just having those 4 elite years is enough. And I know it's a weird comparison, but I think Mike Bossy has shown us that it's not about longevity.
Yeah, that's fair, actually. With Mike Bossy, that's a fair point.
I mean, if Vasi is not Hall of Fame caliber, then no one is.
Interesting way to put it. I mean, like, you compare him to, like, does he have a better argument than Henrik Lundqvist?
Yes, 100%.
I mean,
he's dominated more consistently. He's won more hardware. The only goalie that has a better quote unquote argument than him of goalies not currently in the Hall of Fame is Marc-Andre Fleury. And so you can't tell me they're only going to add one goalie. You know, right. That's ridiculous. So that's my argument.
Controversy over this Vezina aside, I mean, both of these goalies that were in the running to win it are going to make the Hockey Hall of Fame. So,
yeah.
With Nikita Kucherov, then we'll go ahead and talk about it. His shirtless, drunk, maybe even other substances involved press conference where he criticized Montreal. Quote, the fans of Montreal acted like they won the Stanley Cup after winning Game 4. Are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? Their final was beating Vegas in the last round.
Yeah.
And this pissed off a lot of people.
But no one at Bud Light.
No one at Bud Light. Bud Light, big fans, officially sponsoring Nikita Kucherov, which is that not what you want? Here's my thing, Deej. Hockey fans are incredibly two-faced. Let's just call it what it is. We go for these claims of we want personality, but not that type of person. We want personalities, but they got to be classy personalities. Everyone's got to be the nice. Everyone's got to be Carey Price, or hockey fans aren't happy. Because Carey Price's personality is that he's the nicest guy on the face of the earth. And if your personality isn't class all the way, a big part of hockey fans get salty about it. Now, look, yes, celebrating a Stanley Cup playoff win when you thought you were going to get swept. It's a big overtime goal for Josh Anderson. You had every right to do so, right? No, I mean, yeah, Kucherov is saying you're wrong to do that. That's the opinion of the player who was on the opposite side, who's saying, screw you, we had a 3-1 lead still heading into tonight, and then we beat you. You know? Like, yeah. What are you going to do? What other opinion do you... Like, oh, yeah, no, it was fun watching them celebrate, you know, like they did, setting off fireworks in the streets. And, again, getting fucking tear gassed. Like, yeah, no, it was fun watching that. Like, what the hell do you expect him to say? But, legitimately, somebody like Nikita Kucherov doing this, I don't know how you can't be in favor of this, because in order for a league to grow, you have to have villains. And I'm sorry, but if Tom Wilson is your league's biggest villain, you don't have a very big league, do you? You don't. You look at the football world, the soccer world, who are the villains? Neymar is one of the best players in the goddamn world, but he has this reputation for being a soft diver, a complainer. You look at Cristiano Ronaldo, who is probably the biggest villain in all of sports. Why? Because he is so goddamn good. So goddamn good. But he also has the biggest ego on the planet. Like, everything about the brand of Cristiano Ronaldo is polarizing. And that's what you need. If you are a fan of Cristiano Ronaldo, he's the best in the world. If you hate him, the point is the conversation. Conversation around your star players is what leads to a league being big. You look at the NFL and their star players. Tom Brady and the personality that he has been, whether it be Patrick Mahomes, your Aaron Rodgers of the world. The NBA is obviously the biggest example with someone like LeBron James and how polarizing he is. And it's funny because you look at the NBA as well as an example. And there was a post from Acton the Foolman on Twitter who mentioned this. The Kucherov thing again proves what wimps hockey fans are. In the NBA, players will be like, I hope everyone in Sacramento gets abducted by aliens. And people are like, yeah, legit. Kucherov celebrates going back to back, and people act like he threw a grenade into a baby carriage. And somebody responded to that. And there was a tweet from 4 years ago from a basketball player by the name of Vernon Maxwell, who had been retired for a while. Vernon Maxwell's 55 years old. But Vernon Maxwell was still able to get more attention on the NBA than the NHL ever gets, because he apparently said something about the Utah Jazz fan base. And then he tweeted a few days later, I'd like to apologize to Jazz fans that were offended by my tweets. If I knew you guys had internet in Utah, I would have never made those tweets.
Oh my God. First of all, that's amazing. Second of all, the phrase, I'd like to apologize to Jazz fans, is even funnier taken out of context. But
I mean, it's just like, what? You can't have it both ways. I'm sorry. This idea of like this almost Don Cherry instilled narrative of everyone has to be the classy, good Canadian kid, like, no, just no. There is nothing wrong with what Nikita Kucherov said or did, but it was lacking class. Piss off. Grow up. Stop pearl clutching. The only thing I can think that you could possibly be mad about is if you're a Habs fan. And if you're not a Habs fan and mad about this, I genuinely don't understand your complaints, because this is nothing but positive for the NHL and the sport of hockey.
I agree. I definitely think the NHL could use a Chael Sonnen, or even I would prefer a villain kind of like along the lines of like Maradona. Like, just have somebody punch in a series winning goal and run with it and pretend like they didn't for years.
Right.
And so I don't know. There's too much. Yeah, it's the good old Canadian boy thing. It's stupid. It's not real. It's the let's not address what's going on in the NHL Gary Bettman argument. It's like, it's very fake. People are personalities. People are crazy. There's a reason why the Edge is the greatest in my opinion, the greatest WWE character of all time.
I like how you said the Edge, like he's in U2.
Yeah, right.
I mean, here's my thing, though. What two sports are, in terms of the big four, who are struggling? It's hockey and it's baseball. Why? Because they try to suppress player personality. You look at, God, and I'm sorry, his name is escaping me right now as I go for a quick Google search here. But think about in baseball. Oh, man, you better not celebrate that home run too much, or that's a bad thing. Don't you dare celebrate a home run. No, that's not allowed. You look at the White Sox catcher, where the other team put in a fucking position player to pitch, and he said LOL and just fucking jacked it to center field, and he got in trouble with his own fucking manager. There's a reason why baseball is where it is. There's a reason why hockey is where it is, where a star-driven league with polarizing stars that you love or hate, like the NBA and the NFL, are up here. Quit pearl clutching. Players should be allowed. Nail Yakupov. Remember the controversy, Deej? It was almost a decade ago of Nail Yakupov doing the sliding celebration to center ice. How outraged people were that a rookie was pumped up that he scored a big goal. Like, I don't understand how hockey fans can say we have the best sport and hockey should get more attention, but then anytime somebody shows any personality other than being good Canadian kid, we have an issue with it. I do not understand.
Yeah, it's absurd. And I don't know. I think it just comes down to like just the older generation has that really bizarre expectation of decorum. That just doesn't make any sense because it's not real. Everyone knows it's fake.
Yeah, right. Like we know the person, like, come on. If you love the sport of hockey, you kind of know how hockey players are, right? Even at the lowest level, if you're in a beer league, you know what the common personality types are.
Yeah. I mean, yeah.
Like, I don't understand. I just don't understand the issue whatsoever.
Yeah, it's absurd. People just like to be mad about stuff. I wish I could remember his name because I was thinking about one of the great villains of baseball back in the day was famous for stealing a base by skipping directly from first to third when the umpire wasn't looking. And I can't remember his name or whatever. And it was his famous move. Gosh, someone's going to yell at me in the comments.
I mean, when I think of stolen bases, I think of Ricky Henderson, but
so this was like way back when. This is like Ken Burns baseball.
Early Philadelphia
episodes.
Town Ball or whatever.
Yeah. I wish I could remember the guy's name because he had he just like had antics, and that's what we need. There's not enough antics. There's a very big difference between, because in the current villains in hockey are people that try to hurt people. There's nobody with antics, and Kucherov, antics. And I think that's why I like Nikita Kucherov.
And even then, like, I'm not saying that, because someone might be like, oh, antics. Well, what about Brad Marchand's antics? And it's like, I would rather have Brad Marchand licking people and getting the sport media coverage than Brad Marchand just being like, yep, no, great game. Yep. Oh, yep. We fought hard, pucks and corners, pucks and deep. Yep. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
Like, there are personalities in the league. We have seen it. I want more of Ovi celebrating. Okay, so Ovi celebrates like his stick is on fire. We still talk about that to this day because there have been so few examples since. It's a complete non-issue. And it's like, please, for the love of God, even if we have to drag that side of the fan base kicking and screaming into modern day reality, we have to do it. Please. It is only best for the sport that we have. I'm not saying every press conference should be someone showing up drunk, more than likely, to the podium there, but yeah, can we please allow the personalities in the league to flourish? And like, Deej and I have both said here, we need players to be labeled as having personalities and being polarizing for more than just hurting people.
Yeah, absolutely.
Speaking to Nikita Kucherov, though, 66 points now over the last two playoff runs. That's the fifth largest total in history. Only two players have posted larger totals in back-to-back playoff seasons, those being Mario Lemieux and Wayne Gretzky. I don't know if you've heard of them. So Nikita Kucherov, for the love of God. Kuch also playing with a fractured rib since the Islanders series, the incident with Scott Mayfield. He wasn't even the only guy hurt. Alex Killorn was also hurt. He broke his fibula, had surgery to put a rod in it, and was hoping to play in the series. So always interesting to hear about the injuries that come out. But yeah, Alex Killorn, you're a madman. And well, I mocked that Harvard education for the lack of mask wearing last year. And hey, can't say he isn't tough. At the very least, I guess.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
our final talking point then here, Deej, about Tampa before we talk about Montreal. And it's kind of a category that we have deemed as what's next for the Lightning. Now, I had mentioned this before, too. A lot of people are ragging on Julien Brisebois for getting what essentially people are calling, oh, you got the keys to the Ferrari from Steve Yzerman. As if you don't then know that, okay, I need to know how to drive this Ferrari. Once I get the keys, I need to understand how to drive the damn thing. And I need to know how to maintain it. And I don't understand how people are sitting here discounting Julien Brisebois as the GM of this team, because that core that Yzerman built, yes, gigantic part, but you do not win a cup unless you have the right supporting cast around the stars. And that is what Julien Brisebois helped build. Tampa Bay does not win back-to-back cups without the likes of Barclay Goodrow, Blake Coleman, and Patrick Maroon. They just don't. So, again, I think anybody discounting Julien Brisebois right now has the complete wrong opinion, all things considered. And then in talking about them, what's next for Tampa because of that, and this was from AJ, does Tampa have a legitimate shot at 3 straight cups, or do they have to shed too much cap? Now, Deej, obviously you talked about this a ton, how much cap they actually have to shed, and it is a ton. They don't have their first, second, or fourth this year. They don't have their second or third next year, and who gives a shit? Because they just won back-to-back cups.
Yeah.
But in talking about this, Barclay Goodrow's a UFA. He gone. Blake Coleman, UFA. Have fun in Dallas. Aside from that, like Ross Colton will have to be signed. He might get a little bit more. David Savard's a UFA. He's gone. But the big problem is, again, the amount of cap that they have to shift. And I think defensively they're set, right? Hedman, McDonough, Sergachev. Ryan McDonough, by the way, he averages 16 playoff games a year for the last, like, his 10-year average over the last 10 years of his career. He averages 16 playoff games a postseason. What the hell? But Hedman, McDonough, Sergachev, Chernak is your top 4. You're set. Jan Ruda's back next year. Doesn't really matter who your 6th and 7th guys are. Like, you're going to be fine. You should be able to replace from
Cal
within.
Foote in the system.
Exactly. Cal Foote is there, who can look to step up. They have some other guys as well in the system. Not an incredible amount of options, but it won't be that hard to find a 6-7 type of guy. So then you're looking at the forwards. Presumably Kucherov's going nowhere. People have still wondered about Steven Stamkos.
I think he goes to Edmonton. I think he wins a Richard. That just makes so much sense to me.
I genuinely wouldn't be surprised if Stamkos is gone. And this is not a shot at Stamkos' leadership. But Deej, whenever the Tampa Bay Lightning won, did you notice who was standing right outside the boards, giving everyone a high five or a fist bump as the team went to the locker room?
Yeah, it was Thunderbug.
Is that his nickname now?
No, it's just, the guy's always hurt.
Every time, it was Victor Hedman. Victor Hedman would be the last guy off the ice congratulating every member of the team as they left. You have a natural built-in captain to take over for Steven Stamkos and to shed $8.5 million. He's 31. He has injury concerns. I'm not saying it's the right move to trade Steven Stamkos, arguably the best player in your franchise's history. And that's the thing. For Tampa at this point, you got a hell of a lineage with the LeCavaliers, the St. Louis, the Hedmans, the Hobby Boolens of the world. Brad Richards as well. Brad Richards in his prime deserves a really good shout. Dan Boyle. I do see it being a realistic option that Steven Stamkos could waive his no-movement clause and be willing to go elsewhere.
Yeah. I think that's the only way you can ice a 23-man roster is if you get rid of Steven Stamkos. It's very unfortunate, but it's just the position they're in.
There are other options, I suppose. Now, Braden Point has 1 year left before he's an RFA. Andre Palat has 1 year left until he's a UFA. Point's making 6.75, Palat's making 5.3. The argument is you get rid of Andre Palat now to help the cap, or you keep Andre Palat for next year, and then a decent chunk of his money is going to giving Braden Point a long-term raise. So you could move on from Andre Palat a season early. Yanni Gord, 5.1 for the next 4 years. I don't know if you want to get rid of him, but that's a deal that you could move. Obviously, Tyler Johnson, his stock just went up a little bit. Tyler Johnson had a really good playoffs and a really good cup final. $5 million for the next 3 years. I could see Tyler Johnson ending up in Seattle, even if Tampa has to give up a little bit to get them to take him. And then from there, the only other guy that comes to mind is Alex Killorn, making $4.5 million essentially for the next 2 years. There are big money guys that can be moved. I think the point is this forward core is going to be drastically different next year.
Yeah, I think one of those guys you just mentioned ends up in Edmonton, because Edmonton seems to me like the type of team that is going to go out of their way to trade for a guy that has won multiple cups so that they can, quote unquote, teach other people how to win cups, which I don't even think that's a real thing. I think that's something you have to learn by experience.
There is something to say, though, about having that veteran experience in the locker room, though.
Yeah.
I mean, does Montreal make it to a cup final without the likes of Corey Perry, Eric Stahl, even someone like a Joel Edmondson, who, I don't think is as positive of an impact player as a lot of Habs fans thought or think that he is, but there is something to say about the leadership aspect.
Yeah, I can agree with that.
So, again, for Tampa, we'll see. I mean, I think we're going to get answers very, very soon over what happens next with them. I think it's a necessity that, a little bit less than 2 weeks from now, like, we are already going to see a drastic change to this roster, if not sooner. I don't think the old honeymoon period lasts all that long for them in terms of this group staying together, getting to enjoy it. Deed, shall we move on to wrap up the show and talking about the Montreal Canadiens?
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. So first and foremost, Habs fans, you'll be happy to know that this loss means Canada's cup drought extends to its 28th season. A lot of people are like, man, are you happy like that Canada has a drought? It's like, not necessarily, but I am happy that it wasn't Montreal to break it for obvious reasons. I mean, trust me, I haven't forgotten the chirps from 2019 from Habs fans about the Bruins losing a cup final. I haven't forgotten the crying Marchand memes. Enjoy your crying Josh Anderson memes in response, by the way. Like, that's just how it works, really, for the most part. It's just, hey, am I supposed to be happy necessarily? Like, I've talked about this on the show. Like, if Calgary were to win, would I be upset? Not necessarily. Although, for the love of God, even from the official Flames Twitter account, can we let go of the "it was in" narrative? It wasn't. Feel free to watch the parallax scrolling video. I was rooting for Calgary. I really like Jerome McGinley, but what are you going to do? Vancouver, I mean, hey, it was 10 years ago, but 2011, am I going to be overly happy if the Canucks win? I mean, I'm not going to be upset. Edmonton, at this point, I'd be kind of pissed if they don't win. For the love of God, stop wasting McDavid. Ottawa, I couldn't be happy for if they won the cup because Eugene Melnyk is a horrible person. Sorry. Toronto, I mean, it makes for great theater when they lose, but I've talked about it. I have a soft spot for the Leafs because of Steve Dangle. Winnipeg, it'd just be kind of Like, the only reason why I'm happy Montreal lost is because it's Montreal. It's not so much being like, yeah, fuck Canada. It's more of a, fuck Montreal. But, I mean, Deej, there's no denying, like, this was an incredible run. I mean, I had that stat about Tampa's power play for cup finalists. Montreal had the third best PK of all time among cup finalists at 91%. And it only started to crack when they ran into the Tampa buzzsaw power play. But we talk about kind of a combination of what's next. Like, we'll talk about the series and their future. But the word was that Dominique Ducharme is likely to be named Habs head coach. No longer interim. That could be as soon as today. By the time this podcast is out, that could have been announced. My question, though, here, is that a good thing? Because I don't know if it is, even though he just led his team to a cup.
I think it is. I think a good coach helps his team out. He makes them outperform their expectations, and that's what we saw with the Habs. And they did it in a way that I think isn't unsustainable. I don't feel like the Habs got lucky, and I think that is why Ducharme belongs as their head coach.
So here's my thing. He was asked before Game 4 about any possibility of Jake Allen starting over Carey Price. And obviously, he said no, Carey's the guy. He's going to be the guy. But it's just interesting to me then, off of Dom Ducharme, like the logic of who gets to stay in net when they're playing poorly versus who doesn't. For example, again, it's not everything, but Carey Price in 5 games in the Cup final had an .888 save percentage. Straight 8s in those 5 games. He gets to stay in. I'm not saying putting Jake Allen in meant different things would have happened. I mean, obviously it's a little bit different, but you saw the situation with here's Scott Darling stepping in for Corey Crawford to help get them out of the first round, and then Crawford takes back over. It's a little bit different in the Cup final, but Carey Price did not have a good Cup final. And look, again, remember what I said earlier in the show about trusting GMs? Oh no, their word's fine. 2015, no, don't worry. GM said what the cap loophole is not an issue, so we believe it. Oh wait, Tampa won now. It's a problem. What about now? Oh, well, Carey Price didn't play well. Oh, well, actually, Shea Weber said he was okay and that the team in front of him wasn't good enough. So, feel free to take your opinion, but Carey Price didn't have a good series. Oh, but John Cooper said Carey Price is the best goalie of his generation. So clearly it doesn't matter that Carey Price had a bad series then. But my point is, Carey Price, again, great human being, had a slightly more consistent playoff run than he did and has in the regular season. Call him a big-time playoff performer, that's fine. But in those 5 games in the Cup final, he wasn't great. But he got to stay in the lineup. And it's a little bit different changing out a goalie from changing out a forward. But Jesperi Kotkaniemi's not playing that great. Take a seat, kid. Thomas Tatar. Oh, he had 5 bad playoff games. He wasn't seen for the rest of the postseason. That is one of your best offensive players. But he's not a playoff performer, so he's going to sit. And then people wonder why he didn't want to talk to the media at their end of season kind of recap. Yeah, Thomas Tatar's gone from Montreal, and that's probably not a good thing for Montreal. So I don't know. I have some questions about Dominic Ducharme. Again, not saying pulling Carey Price would have been the right move, but I question the logic because I guess a lot of people forget already. Like Cole Caulfield, Jesperi Kotkaniemi, I think maybe even Nick Suzuki. I think he played, but they didn't exactly trust the youth that helped get them to the final in that first round matchup against Toronto. Yeah. So it makes me wonder, does someone like Jesperi Kotkaniemi get traded? Because he might not fit what Dom Ducharme wants as a coach. And I don't think that's a good decision at all to look at trading Jesperi Kotkaniemi, because you're not likely to get fair return if you're going to trade him, as you're actively tanking his value by scratching him in a Cup final.
Yeah, so I don't think they trade him. I just think he's young. He's kind of undersized to play against a team like the Tampa Bay Lightning, and he's still developing that high-end skill set to play at that level. And I mean, I understand the benching. I think it makes sense to me.
I think it's very EA NHL. I think it's a move I would make in that video game because of how the algorithms work in deciding who wins a playoff series in that game. Well, my star player isn't performing. My 88 overall is not performing. Let me put in a 78. LOL, we won. I'm sorry, but to me, it's especially with Thomas Tatar, who you're committing $5 million to a season. I'm sorry, but you have the logic of, we go down with the ship with Carey Price because he's had a pretty good playoffs. I mean, again, you can look back at some of the game logs for those other games, and some of the stats aren't pretty, but again, like I said about Carey Price months ago, he has the ability to make some highlight reel saves that nobody else can make, and then he lets in a few soft ones. But everyone points to the highlight reel as, it's Carey Price, and he's still the best, which, whatever. We can agree to disagree on that debate. Not saying he's trash. I just don't think he's among the best of the best anymore consistently. But again, he stays, and someone like Thomas Tatar gets bounced. I think Montreal would have been better suited, and you can argue they would have lost to Tampa no matter what, and that's fine. I think Montreal would have been slightly better suited to put their best players out there. I don't think that's a hot take. Put your best players out there. And, I mean, we saw plenty of line shuffling. I mean, how much line shuffling did you see from Tampa? You didn't see much. What did Tampa do? Here's our best players. Good luck trying to beat them. Montreal's I guess we can take out Merrill and Gustafson this time and bring Romanoff and Kulak back. I guess we can do that. Oh, well, maybe not. Maybe we'll play these guys. And then forward-wise, I guess we can sit Kotkaniemi for Evans, but let's bring Kotkaniemi back. Let's set him for Evans again. I'm sorry, it's the Stanley Cup final. You got to roll with your best. And I think, they probably still don't win that series, but I don't think the inconsistency in the lines and the coaching did the Habs any favor in that final.
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly possible. I think you stick with Carey Price. You're not going to win this series without Carey Price winning the Conn Smythe as bad as he was, and there's no reason for you, because of that fact, regardless of how he played in the first 3 games, you can't bench him, because if you bench him for Jake Allen's not going to lead you to a miracle reverse sweep that's just not how this works. So you give Carey Price. You give Carey Price every opportunity to be that world beater Carey Price that shows up sometimes, and you cross your fingers and you hope it happens 4 games in a row. That's just all you can have for. That's why you don't bench him.
Oh, like I said, I mean, I understand why they didn't and the logic behind not, but have some consistency in your assessments.
Yeah. I mean, at the end of the day,
why wasn't Josh Anderson scratched? Josh Anderson was arguably more inconsistent than Jesperi Kotkaniemi in that series. Like, you can look at the numbers behind it. Josh Anderson was either phenomenal or was an absolute dumpster fire, and it changed on a near game-to-game basis. Why did he get to stay in over Kotkaniemi? What, because he's big and he hits?
No, yeah, I think that's exactly. I mean, all their decisions were size-based because they could not stop Tampa's skill base.
Well,
and so I think when you're down 3-0, you make weird decisions. You roll the dice on a hope and a prayer.
Well, I think the problem is then they were never going to win the cup anyway.
Yeah.
Because you look at it then, like, if your entire game plan is not playing your game and is doing everything but trying to counterattack in 5D chess, whatever the hell Tampa's throwing at you, whereas Tampa's just like, hey, this is us, good luck. Montreal's like, well, shit, if they're doing that, then we have to do this. And if this is, like, then what the hell were you going to do in the first place?
Yeah. No, I agree. I don't think there was any way they could have won, but I don't know. Luckily, I think Montreal got to see a glimpse of their future.
We'll talk more about their future for sure. Quick thing I want to mention before I forget, Deej, the Tougies Take Bracket Challenge.
Yeah.
Wanted to mention this because we hadn't talked about it for a decent amount of time. Had 132 entries, which wasn't too bad for a very short notice thing. We thank you all for that. Deej, do you know where you finished?
Probably dead last.
Dead last was in 126. There were apparently 6 people who didn't even fill out a bracket. KYW29 finished 126th with 10 points. Deej finished in a tie for second last with 20 points. Deej's bracket, by the way, was fantastic. Might I remind you, he had a Final Four of Edmonton, Pittsburgh, Colorado, and Florida. Deej finished with 20 points there. Myself, I wasn't that much better, if I'm being honest. I was, God, where the hell was I? Shout out to @DeejUSA in 123rd. I didn't do that much better. I was in 103rd with 40 points over 20. My Final Four, of course, was Toronto, Pittsburgh, Colorado, and Carolina. I want to congratulate our undisputed winner by 12 points with a total of 256. Pull your goat, who only correctly picked, God, how many correct predictions did he have on this bracket? He picked Tampa as the winner. So there you go. Shout out to Pull Your Goats with the correct champion pick of Tampa. Deej, only 6 people picked Tampa to win the cup. As crazy as that is.
Yeah.
And shout out to Pull Your Goat for winning. What's your prize? I don't know. We'll think of something maybe.
You get your name mentioned on the podcast.
There you go.
There's your trophy.
So I was going to mention here an update as well, because we had talked about this recently. I think we can still officially call the Shea Weber PK Subban trade a dead even draw.
Yeah, I agree.
Both teams have made the cup final. Both teams lost the cup final with said player in their lineup.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I'd say it's a draw.
Corey Perry now losing 2 straight cup finals to Tampa. Mentioned, yes, I want to play hockey next year. I think it'd be a great decision for Montreal to bring him back. Seems to really kind of revitalize his career there.
Yeah, I think that's a way to punch your ticket to the finals. It's the Corey Perry ticket, the gravy train.
Bring in Pat Maroon and then you're golden. Have both of them at the same time. See what power is more powerful. No, I got it. Montreal has Corey Perry, Patrick Maroon, and Taylor Hall on the same team. Will you get the number 1 pick? Will you lose in the cup final? Will you win another one?
Maybe all the above.
And Crash Andrews, friend of the show, Crash Andrews, who we'll have to have on the show at some point, did ask the question, and I think we already kind of answered it, Deej. In hindsight, was there anything Montreal could have done to avoid losing to Tampa? Or was it a foregone conclusion that Cinderella go back to normal at midnight? I think it was, aside from voodoo wizardry and, not necessarily bullshit, as the Steve Dangle podcast said once upon a time, but voodoo wizardry and Carey Price truly being the best goalie in the world, I don't think too much would have happened.
Yeah, it was like the Avengers Endgame odds, where there's 14,000 possible scenarios and they only win in one. Montreal was just not a team that could compete with Tampa here. They would have needed to play perfectly, and they would have needed Tampa to have 4 just absolutely mistake-ridden games, and that just wasn't going to happen.
Yeah, and Montreal made quite a few mistakes. A lot of Tampa's goals came directly off of Habs turnovers. The final thing to talk about here as we wrap up the show, just the promising future for the Habs. Indeed, you alluded towards it, but whether it's Cole Caulfield, who became the first rookie in NHL history to have 3 overtime points in a single postseason, also first rookie to have 2 overtime points when facing elimination in a single postseason. Alex Romanoff became the youngest defenseman in Habs history to score a goal in the Cup final. Nick Suzuki, youngest player in Habs history to record a point in 3 straight games during a Cup final. I mean, this team's future is still incredibly strong. And I said as much on Twitter. I said as much in that video on YouTube. Mark Bergevin. I think that core of Subban, Pacioretty, Price, Markov, Pakanitz, I think that core could have won a cup had the right pieces been put into place at the time. They elected to blow it up, and they did very well in the blow up. Obviously, acquiring someone like Suzuki, big part of the plan here. This is a team that should win a cup in the next 5 to 10 years. The ability is there, much like the New York Rangers. I think the ability is there, and you look in the immediate future. They have almost $15 million in cap space. Yes, you got to re-sign Corey Perry, but that would be a Jason Spezza like dirt cheap contract. Armia, who's to say? Eric Stahl, who's to say? Thomas Tatar's out the door. Philip Deneau's the big UFA. Who knows what happens there? Lehkonen and Kotkaniemi are both RFAs. But aside from that, I mean, you should be getting Jonathan Drouin back. Hopefully he's well. You have your first. They actually have Tampa's second this year, so 2 second-rounders, 2 third-rounders, 3 fourth-rounders. They have all of their picks for the next 2 years. Like, this is a team. They have, draft space cap, or they have draft capital. They have cap space to weaponize. They have a solid crop of young talent already. This is a team that's on the trajectory to win in the near future. The question is whether or not they do that with Carey Price as their goaltender, or if it's going to be in the Caden Primo era.
Yeah, I don't know. It's a good question. And I think Suzuki, Romanov, and Caulfield getting a taste of this is one of the best things that can happen in this franchise. I think it's going to take them 3 or 4 years to finally get to the point where they're at the level where it will be impossible to stop them. And it's just not gonna, I don't think it's gonna occur at the same time as Carey Price's window, unfortunately.
So with that, everybody, Deej has to head out. We thank you very much for listening to the show. We will be back on Tuesday, most likely, to see how everything plays out. Deej, solid show. Our first season's worth of podcast coverage has come to a close.
40 episodes. We got off-season stuff to talk about. We are continually sponsored by Manscaped for the next little while here, so get ready for some unhairy off-season content. We'd like to thank Manscaped again. Code Tougie, 20% off at manscaped.com. Manscaped, your balls will thank you. I think that does it for the show. Tougie, do you have a final note?
Lol Habs.
Yeah, I'm going to say Vasilevsky's pads equal the megalodon. We'll see y'all later.